Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey, everybody. It's episode 54 of Screw the Commute podcast. We got a great guest. I've known him for a couple hundred years. His name is Greg Williams, and he's going to teach you, listen to this, he's going to teach you how to negotiate your way out of a paper bag. All right, so he'll be on here in a minute. Now, episode 53, hope you didn't miss that, Denise Wakeman. She's built her entire business around her love for hiking and mountain climbing. She's got a truly lifestyle business. Today's sponsor is AmazingPublicSpeaking.com. This is a membership site with over 475 professional and public speaking training videos, plus audios and articles. And we also have a corresponding complimentary webinar called 30 Speaking Tips in 37.625 minutes. All right. So it'll go a little bit longer than that. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes at screwthecommute.com/54 because this is episode 54. All right, let's get to the main event. Now, they say many people in our government couldn't negotiate their way out of a paper bag. All right, that's why they overpay for everything with our tax dollars. Well, you don't want your personal and business money wasted, and our guest is going to teach you how to get what you want when you negotiate. Greg Williams is the master negotiator and body language expert. He's also a TV news contributor. He's authored 7 books on the topic of negotiation and reading body language, and he's trained tens of thousands of people worldwide. Today, he'll unlock some extremely important negotiation secrets that you can use to better your negotiation outcomes. And hey, business is about negotiating with clients, with vendors, with employees. It's all, every day is a negotiation. So, Greg, are you ready to screw?
Oh, whoa, such an invitation. I hope you kiss me first. Yes, I am, Tom.
The commute that is, Greg. You didn't hear me out.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. We'll go to dinner if you insist. So, all right, Greg. I've known you forever, but tell everybody what you do.
Tom, I teach people how to negotiate better in order to achieve more of what it is that they want out of life. I also teach them how to read body language and nonverbal clues so that they get insight into the mindset of the people that they're negotiating with. Tom, my motto is you're always negotiating, and that means what you do today actually influences tomorrow's outcomes. And thus, by being able to read body language to gain insight into the real thoughts that are occurring in the other negotiator's mind, one can become not only a better negotiator, but in the process, achieve more of what it is they seek in life. And that's how I teach people, or that's what I teach people to do.
Okay, so let's take this scenario. You're in a definitely high stakes negotiation, and somebody on the other side gets up and shoots the moon at you. How do you read that?
Well,
are you winning or losing at that point? I'm not sure.
Well, it all depends on who's shooting it.
If it's me, you don't want to. You probably get sick and sign anything.
Well, that's the truth. But seriously, Tom, you did just hit on a factor.
I did.
The negotiation of any negotiation, and that factor is the unknown.
Right.
Because there are times when we can do things as a negotiator that will change the dynamics of the negotiation. Now, I must admit, well, depending upon the environments we're in, that last scenario that you just created might be interpreted as being a little, let's call it brash.
I can see that happening in some circles, but maybe not. It's not mainstream, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, exactly. But think about what might be associated with such a move. Might the other negotiator holler?
A
Just holler.
fart, maybe? That could be associated
Okie dokie. Then. But
Well,
see,
but anyway, it could be representative of something that's going on in their mind, right? About the negotiation. Truly, right? I mean, they could give you the finger. They could, I mean, a lot of things. They could cross their hands. They could cross their arms. They could look away. All these things, right?
well, yes, exactly. And when they do it is what you should take note of as you're negotiating, because they have committed such an act because of something that was either said, done, or something that they saw. And
Mm.
what they're doing is reacting to that stimuli. So if you are aware of what caused them to do that, and let's say you wanted to provoke that type of reaction in them, that means you're on the right track per whatever negotiation scenario you're engaged in and the outcome you're seeking to continue doing the same
Because
thing.
you got the response
If
that you wanted. If you didn't, then
e-
you've got to change tactics, I guess, right?
exactly. And that goes to the point also of making sure in the planning stages of a negotiation that you adopt different scenarios whereby if X occurs, you'll exercise A. If Y
Mm.
occurs, you'll switch to B,
So
et
you're
cetera, et cetera.
planning ahead of time for this,
Oh, always.
right?
In all negotiations, you should plan for any type of potentialities that you encounter as to how you'll address that particular situation.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, it's a serious thing, right? You just don't want to go in and wing it, no matter how experienced you think you are. Because I know even in speaking, like the night before, I'm still practicing stories out loud just to make sure I don't flub it when I'm in the real setting. And I might have done those stories 1,500 times. It's hard to tell. So
And see that
practice is important.
and that's exactly what makes you the professional that you are and will do so for those negotiating. I oftentimes tell people, dependent upon the severity of the negotiation and the outcome that you seek, you should definitely go through role plays.
Wait a minute. When you
Role
said
play.
the word severity, do you mean the
Mhm.
amount of money involved, or the confrontation involved, or what do you mean by severity?
The value that you seek, because money is not necessarily the limiter that some people seek from a negotiation.
Right.
They want more prestige,
Mm-hmm.
and thus the value to them would be in gaining more prestige as the result of the outcome of the negotiation.
Employee might want more time off or something if
Yeah,
they were trying to get from their
exactly.
boss, right?
Exactly, Tom. And that's why you need to focus on what it is that you really want and put a label on it. Like I just said a moment ago, it may not be dollars. It may not be, in some cases, it may not be prestige. It may be more time off to spend with your family, etc. So if you know what it is that you're aiming for, you then know how to role play for that outcome. And in the role play, you should also have someone that will be like the individual
Mm-hmm.
that you will be negotiating with. Now, notice
Or
the
you could
phrase I just
imagine
used.
them if you had to, right? If you're by yourself,
Well, yes,
it's
you
hard.
can, but it is. And the purpose of having another individual is because if you practice by yourself, you'll be engaged in the mental attitude that you already have per how you think the negotiation will
Oh,
flow.
hmm.
And thus, if you actually role play with another individual, that will shift the dynamics of the thought process that goes into the negotiation.
Boy, I see that could be touchy there, Greg, because let's say you know you're going to negotiate with a really big jerk. And so you go to somebody else in your company and you say, look, I got this association with a really big jerk, and you're the closest person that I have to practice on. So would you mind coming over? Well, I mean, what are you going to do? You know?
Well, in that particular case, you may not want to get someone inside of your organization
Oh,
as
okay,
opposed
yeah.
to a
Just
friend.
put an ad for in Craigslist for I need a
Yeah,
big jerk
exactly.
to practice negotiating.
Yeah, on Fiverr even,
Yeah, right. Hey, Greg. So you've been doing this a long time, ever since I've known you. But did you ever have a job? The,
Well,
the
many
dreaded
years
job?
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I actually started my business in 1993, Tom.
Yeah, right.
Prior to that, I actually had a job. I was a senior vice president of an organization. And at that time, I had the highest margins in the company. And the president came to me and said, well, what are you doing differently? Can you teach the other people how to do it? And I
Oh,
told him, hey, I just negotiate. And I didn't even consider the fact that I was a good negotiator, but I had learned skills, literally, Tom, from the time I was a kid watching my mother negotiate for everything. And Tom, at times she would say to people, well, I heard you say that's your best price, but how much better can you make it? And here I am, this little kid, four,
uh-huh.
5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And I remember telling my mother, Mom, that's embarrassing. People are going to think we're poor. She said, well, first of all, we are. Number one.
That's
And
beside the
number
point.
two, yeah, exactly. And number two, the more money you save, the more money you can do with what you have left. If you learn to negotiate better, you'll learn to save more money also.
Great
Now, she was
advice.
placing the emphasis. Yeah, exactly. And Tom, I actually took my tagline from her, you're always negotiating. She was the one that actually gave me that
My goodness.
tagline.
Yeah, this reminds that is so beautiful. Great story. That reminds me of my mother because I came from a little two-horse town. Literally, it's still to this day, this population is 500 people, and we lived in the suburbs. Right? So we're
Mm.
total sticks. So I came from, and then I hit it big, and I was living in D.C. and I had a big Mercedes sedan, and I go back to this little town to visit my mom, and she'd always beg me to take her to the thrift stores and the Salvation Army because we grew up very frugal. And I still to this day I'm frugal. I'm not cheap, but I'm frugal. And so
Mhm.
she I pull up in this big Mercedes to the Salvation Army, and she's inside uh, bitching about this blouse that costs 25 cents. And she wants it for 15 cents because it has a stain on it. And I'm like crawling under the counter. But to this day, I'm always bargain hunting, and she did the same for me. She taught me to watch your money, right?
Exactly, Tom. And that's a very good lesson too,
Hmm.
because our parents came from a generation
Right.
whereby you had to watch what it was that you had in order to get more of what it was that you wanted. And thus, like yourself, I'm frugal also to this day. And truth be known, Tom, I still do love going into thrift stores. First of
Me
all,
too.
I consider it like almost like a bargain hunting
Hmm.
venture or something, you know? And
Where I do it now is on there's buying apps. So
mm,
there's Facebook Marketplace. I did a whole thing on this one on an episode. I forget what number it was, but there's OfferUp, there's Let Go, Craigslist, and Facebook Marketplace. And virtually everything that I buy that's possible to buy, I buy it off of a buying app. And I get
ah,
90% off of brand new stuff. Let's say somebody got an electric drill for a gift. And I mean, this one guy told me, man, my wife wants me to fix anything. I can barely, put my socks on in the morning. I'm not drilling holes and stuff. It was brand new and it was like 90% off. So yeah,
wow.
I love that kind of stuff. So, but take me back a little bit further. All right, you took me clear back to when you were a kid, but I mean, the jobs before you were a big shot executive. What you do working up through the system?
Oh my gosh, Tom, literally. Now, you'll understand the time frame that I'm speaking of when I said when I was 4 years old, my parents allowed me to shine shoes close to the corner, literally. And it was the neighborhood bar, to be quite frank
Right,
with you.
right.
And I used to see all kinds of people going in and out of the bar, and the men would allow me to shine their shoes. And I noticed if I was nice at times, nicer than normal, whatever be the case, they'd give me a dime instead of a nickel.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they'd give me a quarter even.
Wow.
And I took note of, okay, so the way you project yourself to someone to a degree determines how they will also interact with you. And therefore, you can enhance that process by being nice sometimes.
Mhm.
Sometimes there were jerks that you mentioned a moment ago,
Yeah.
type of individuals. And those were people, even at a young age, that I realized you'll have to stand up to those type of people or else they'll run over
Right.
you or
Hmm.
attempt to do so. And again, I developed my negotiation strategies as a result of that. As I grew older, I was a chef trainee, I was a dishwasher. I mean, my gosh, Tom, I was a computer operator, a
Yeah.
systems analyst, computer programmer. I mean, I've touched so many rungs on the ladder that
Yeah.
I've climbed over the years that I guess it also gave me a good background from which to create negotiation scenarios and address them.
Yeah. Well, when you say about the person running over you, is this the same thing that somebody could use against a bully? Do some of the things that you teach or
Yeah,
no?
oh, definitely so. Because in some cases, in my latest book, Negotiating with a Bully, as an example, I speak about the fact that you have three types of bullies. You have the hardcore bully, the middle core bully, and the soft core
All
bully.
right, hold on.
The,
Before you explain that, is this for business people with the metaphor of a bully, or is this for real bullies for kids and teens and things like that, or
this
both?
can go this can go across all spectrums.
Okay.
It really, really can. Because first of all, you know that you're being bullied based on how you feel. And thus, Tom, someone may approach you and say something in a derogatory manner, and you may go, "Well, I don't think so," or whatever might be your response to tell them, "Hey, that's not acceptable." Someone else may encounter the same type of individual and may just shrug it off because, for whatever reason, they don't accept it or recognize it as being bullying or being bullied. And thus, the way you feel will determine to what degree you're being bullied, and then you need to identify the type of person that you're dealing with. The hardcore bully is someone that doesn't give a heck
Mm-hmm.
about you, period, point blank. He's out to maximize his returns. He will step on his own mother in order to do that.
Yeah.
The middle core bully is someone that has graduated from the soft core bully, but at the same time has not reached the levels of a hardcore bully, and thus he's still feeling his way, as it were. The softcore bully is someone that I also term a bully in waiting, a bully in training. He's someone that will test to what degree he can bully others, and he's the one that you stand up to the most, and he'll back down the quickest, and that will de-escalate as you go further up the line.
So will all of them? They say a lot of times, they won't respect you until you stand up to them. Is that true across the board, or can that get your face beat in?
Again, it depends. And I remember years ago, you and I did a session about negotiations, and my answer was it depends.
Right.
And it really does. It depends on the type of individual that you're dealing with. It also
You need to
is
be able to
determined.
read that, in other words.
Well, yes, and you read it based on the environment that you're in. Because let's say you're dealing with a softcore bully, but you're in an environment where people are egging him on
Mm-hmm.
to confront you. And if you then say something along the lines of, "Oh, okay, so you just said you're going to punch me in the face. What do you think?" If by chance he says, "I'm going to punch you in the face," and your response is, "Well, what do you think I'm going to do while you're punching me in the face?" Well, the folks backing him could say something like, "Oh, he's challenging you,
Uh-huh.
he's threatening
Right.
you," and that will egg him on. That promotes him to do something that he otherwise would not have done. Now, depending upon the environment, again, you read the bully, and there's certain body language gestures that you can observe in order to gain insight into his thought process. Let's say while he's saying, "I'm going to punch you in the face," he's literally withdrawing his head back ever so slightly from you. Well, what he's saying is, "I'm going to punch you in the face, but no, I really don't want to." Oh my gosh, Tom, I'm near New York. Can you hear the train going
Oh,
by?
yeah, that's all right. Don't jump on it. Just keep talking.
Okay, good enough then.
But I was just
But
thinking, when the guy, if that happened to me, when the guy moved his head back, that means I'd hit him in the throat because it's exposed before he could say another word. And I said, "Who's next?"
Tom,
Is
seriously
that not
speaking.
the exact thing you teach? I don't
Well,
know.
no, but what I was going to say is I don't promote violence, but Tom, in that particular situation, that might be the appropriate action
Well, I don't
because
know if I have the brutal self-defense course. I don't know if you saw me
yes,
putting that out, but yeah, there's times when you have to preemptive strike because you're going to
exactly.
get killed or maimed if you don't. So and it has to do it in a situation that you can articulate why you felt so threatened, like something was going to happen to you. But you have to take the element of surprise and strike first if it's inevitable. If you can't run, if you can't get away, get to safety, you just sometimes you have to preemptive strike.
Exactly. And understand something about bullying. Bullying is all about control. So, like you just said a moment ago, if you are preemptive and you strike that individual, you have literally taken control from him. Now, again, going back to the environment, depending upon who else is in the environment, you might be prepared to strike others if they approach you, or striking that bully may cause the others to back away too. So you're calculating to what degree you should do what in a particular situation based on who else is in that environment and in that
Absolutely. It
situation.
sounds like the self-defense class, but I mean, I wouldn't strike him in the throat unless it was the last ditch effort. It'd be more, I would be trying to de-escalate the
Well,
situation.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Tom, that can be done with words.
Mm-hmm.
You could say something along the lines of, let's say he's somewhat aggressive. And when I say somewhat aggressive, on a scale of 1 to 10, he's at a 5. And you can tell that he really doesn't want to be aggressive, but he's testing you. You can either lean closer to him and say, look, we really don't have to do this. Or you could say, you really don't want to do this.
Yeah, right.
Let your words carry the weight
Mhm.
of the actions that you might perpetrate.
Or you could say, look, man, I'm sorry. Whatever I did, I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. Let me buy you a drink. So things like that. You're not showing weakness, but you're not going too far to escalate the thing. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay,
You have to assess.
so do you remember when you back to the executive suite, somebody asked you to teach what you do, and when did you decide to go on your own?
Well, like I said, 1993 is when I started my business, and I had already started preparing because prior to working for that particular organization, I told the president that I was going to be with that company for approximately 5 years. He was the one that reminded me that it was
Oh,
almost 5 years to the date, to the day rather, that I had made that statement that I actually tenured my resignation. And it was something that I had planned, Tom, from the time I was in college, the progressions that I would go through in order to reach a point where I could start and sustain my own business. That time occurred. I was actually in the position of doing so, and I just went forth and did just that.
but you had some money in the bank. Wasn't
Oh,
just cold turkey and cross your
oh no, no,
fingers,
no,
right?
no. Oh no, 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 no. I definitely had money in the bank.
Okay.
Again, remember what I said. You plan for what
Yeah.
will occur tomorrow by doing the actions that are needed then today.
So did you like hire yourself back to that same company, or how did you get your first clients?
No, I did not hire myself back to that same company, but I had actually surveyed companies that were outside of the contractual area that I had with that organization
Mm-hmm.
to assess to what degree they would support my own efforts. And I got very favorable feedback from those that said they would. And sure enough, within I think the first 30 or 60 days of stepping out on my own, I had, I think, 4 or 5 clients.
Great. So you planned for that really too, to see who was ripe fruit for you. So
Exactly.
have you ever gotten screwed in business?
Huh. If you've been in business and you haven't gotten screwed,
You're not
you
in business,
haven't
right?
stretched to the point. Yeah, exactly, exactly, Tom. Yes, I have.
What'd you do
And
about
actually, well, Tom, now you're invoking some painful memories, but
it? That's
I
all
had
right. You're
one
young.
particular
You can handle
partner. Yeah, yeah, really, right? I had one particular partner that literally took me for
it.
$250,000 at one particular
Oh,
point
that's
in my
all?
career.
Jeez.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lightweight.
okay. Yeah, okay. I still feel pain when I
Yeah.
talk about it. And what did I do about it? Tom, I'm going to preface this. I was from an environment that said eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Uh-huh.
But I
Yeah.
grew out of that because I wanted to become more of the gentleman. You handle disputes through conversations. And truth be known, with that individual, that was my first attempt to handle it through conversation. And it escalated. And then I had to really release it and accept the lessons that I learned from that experience by letting it go. I found out I was creating more mental harm and stress for myself. And I then literally turned it over to God. Now, some people may be going, yeah, well, I would have done X, Y, Z to that guy. And I thought about doing just that. He ended up dying of cancer. He ended up
Wow.
dying of cancer shortly
That's
after
horrible.
the encounter. Yeah, and I said to myself, okay, so God took care of it. But Tom, seriously
I
speaking,
don't know if you
I
could
was
make that
yeah,
jump, right?
well, Tom, it worked for me
Yeah.
because I was
But you
seriously,
didn't get the money
seriously.
back, though, right?
No, I never got the money back,
Yeah.
but I considered that to be the lesson I paid for in knowing when to trust other individuals. And
Right.
Tom, that was something that also led me to learn more about reading body language. I did all kinds of due diligence with this guy and checked him out 10 ways to Sunday, and everything came back positive. The one flaw that I did not consider that he had was if he got into financial trouble, like a lot of people, like some people, I should say, he did things that were irrational, things that I had never considered that he would do because I thought that was so far outside of the realm of possibility that I did not consider it.
Mhm.
As I said, that was what I considered the price to pay for a stern lesson that I learned.
You learned it. I'll give you something more lighthearted to think about. Anything funny, bizarre, weird happened to you in any of these negotiations or in your career?
Oh, yes. Tom, you spoke about a Mercedes a moment ago.
Yeah.
And I must have been in my early 30s at the time. Went into a Mercedes dealership. And I did not have the wherewithal that I have today about negotiating with folks and so forth and so on. And I ended up buying a gold colored Mercedes.
Oh, man.
And yeah, exactly. Now, I did not have the fat rims on it or anything of that nature. So,
Okay.
so we're not going to go there.
No spinners
But
on it or anything?
yeah, exactly, Tom. But someone said to me, black man in a gold Mercedes, what message are you trying to send? And I thought, yeah, that's right. I don't know how professional that image projects itself. So I went back to the dealership and I said to the dealer, the salesperson, I realize I've made a mistake with this car. I don't want it. Now, there's a rescission law that you have
Yeah,
within a
right.
5-day period from from the time you make a major purchase. And the salesperson said, well, I'm sorry, we can't do anything about it. You purchased the car. And I told him of what I just spoke of to you.
Right of
And
recession is what
yeah,
rescission is what it's called. Yeah.
exactly. And he said, well, you'll have to speak to the sales manager. And I said, no problem. So I spoke with the sales manager. And Tom, throughout the interactions I had with the sales manager, he said to me, oh my gosh, you know what? You really are a great negotiator.
No,
And
you didn't
I
have
can,
a long fur coat on and a big cigar at the
no,
time.
no,
Okay.
no, no.
A hat.
Nor did I have, I was getting ready to say, nor did I have the moniker of Superfly or anything like but Tom, the sales manager, and complimenting me really made me feel good. And he said, I'll tell you what, how about if I take, I can't remember the exact amount, maybe $5,000, $6,000 off of what I had already paid, and I'll just give that back to you, and you can go ahead and keep the car. Tom, I walked out of there feeling so good, and remember what I said about money earlier? I felt like, wow, look at this. I got this bonus on top of this. I ended up keeping the car. But the reason I mentioned that story is because it opened my eyes to when we are negotiating and we don't think we're negotiating, number one. And number two, I kept the car for a few years and I ended up getting rid of it. But still, I thought, had someone not said to me, black man in a gold Mercedes, what image are you trying to send? I would have probably been okay with it. But because of that person's input, I was able to go back, get a few more dollars than I otherwise would have had in my pocket, and I learned a very valuable lesson in the
The
process.
only problem is that 5,000-6,000 you had to spend it on a paint job, a new
Well,
wardrobe.
well, Tom, also back then I was somewhat defiant. It was like, okay, yeah, I'm standing out. What?
So if you had to boil down, if somebody wanted to start learning the skill of negotiating, what would be like 3 points you could give them to get started? Besides buying your
Number
books
one,
on it, because we're going to have your stuff in the show notes because you have a lot of good books on this topic.
okay. Well, number one, it goes right back to what I just said a moment ago, my motto, and that is you're always negotiating. So raise your sense of awareness to the fact that you are sending out signals about how you'll react in any situation, anytime and every time you're engaged with other individuals. Tom, I will go into environments and just observe how people interact with
Hmm.
one another, just so when I'm negotiating with them, I have a baseline from which to determine how they will act in a normal environment, and then I can assess to what degree they're getting stressed. So remember that you're always negotiating, number
Okay.
one. Number two, never think that you are too small of an entity to negotiate with an entity that may be a lot larger than yourself. Remember, David slayed Goliath because of the strategy that he
Hmm.
implemented. And thus, if you implement the right negotiation strategy at the right time, you too can overcome larger obstacles. Number three, look at yourself and the mental attitude that you have before entering into a negotiation and try to make that as positive as you possibly can, because the mental attitude that you take into a negotiation will determine the flow of the negotiation and truly have an impact on the outcome of the negotiation.
And those are really good tips. And the number two kind of stuck with me because long time ago, and they've kind of scrubbed the web of this, but Dell Computers almost went out of business from one guy that had trouble and told the world about it on his blog. Right.
Mm.
So yeah, the big companies got to have an ear for the little person, or don't think of yourself as a little person because they depend. And now with all the tools we have to tell the world about trouble, you have a lot more clout than what you think. So what's the best thing about working for yourself, and what's the worst thing?
The best thing is you never stop working for yourself. That's the best and the worst. Tom, I love creating content because I love to give content, create content that can help other people. And there are times when 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm still working on something
Yeah,
that I
sure.
don't even realize it. 2 o'clock in the morning. I like providing happiness for others, and therein lies where I find my happiness. And thus, if you want to consider that to be the worst part of the life that I'm living right now, consider it to be so. But if I were to die tomorrow and I was able to crank out one more piece of content that others could use,
It would
I
be
would die a
let
happy
me tell
man.
you what it would be. It would be a
Okay.
will with my name on and then send it to me early because I want to get past the duress part of it.
Yeah, I know, really, right?
As you're dying.
Exactly. And you know what, Tom? I want to make one more point too, because you can always gain insight about somebody's thought process and their mind based on how you trigger them. For example, this is episode 54 of Screw the Commute podcast.
That's correct.
When you spoke of that, the first thing I thought about was car
Or
54,
where
where
are you?
are you?
Yeah.
Exactly. And what would I have revealed through that thought process
How
had I
old you
spoken
are?
out loud? Exactly,
That was
Tom.
in the 50s, I think, or early
Wait a
60s.
minute
Yeah.
now. I was going to say, come on now.
That
No,
was
no,
in the
no.
early
I saw the
60s. Yeah.
reruns. I saw the
That was the
reruns.
same guy that was Herman Munster. Or no, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, Herman
Yes,
Munster. That
yes,
same guy.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Exactly. Now, people probably, the younger folks are going, okay, who's Herman Munster? Check out the reruns.
Yeah. So in the show notes, we're going to have links to your books. So which would be the best one for them to start learning negotiation? Besides
Well,
the new bully book is good across the board, but you have
yes.
you have 7 books.
Yes, yes. And the one I would refer to per the question you just asked is body language secrets to win more negotiations. And the reason I suggest starting there is because, again, to the degree that you are able to observe someone's body language, you'll get greater insight into what they're thinking at any time. There's a dispute between someone's body language and the words that they utter. Observe and follow their body language. The
Right.
body language will always tell you much more about their true intent than their words ever will. So that's where I'd start.
Now, do you watch TV and like these hearings that they have in front of the Senate and watch the answers? Do you ever try to do that? See if the person's lying or not?
Well, not only do I watch it, that's what I'm called upon the different TV networks to expand upon
Ah,
because again, it's interesting to watch those, especially politicians, that are supposed to have an upgraded sense of knowledge about what to say it, how to stay on message, and so forth and so on. And you can tell when they get off just by the fact that they may momentarily look away from something. As a matter of fact, uh, I don't want to delve too deeply into politics, but one can glean insight about the truthfulness of some of the statements that have been made by people in the current administration just based on the way they've answered questions and how they have paced their speech. When someone changes the pace of their speech, something caused it to do so. And Tom, when it comes to our body always tries to stay in a sense of equilibrium. And that means the body wants to feel comfortable. And once the body doesn't feel comfortable, it will emit signals trying to pull it back into that state of comfort. People wringing their hands. It's a sense that, wait a minute, something's not right, so I'm going to try and soothe myself by rubbing my hands together. People raising an eyebrow. Wait a minute, I need to see this a little more than I'm seeing because something doesn't appear to be right with me. Those are the type of clues that people can pick up on and gain extra insight into what the person's thought process is.
well, what cracked me up? I don't know if you watched the Mark Zuckerberg hearings, the Facebook guy. But
Yes.
what was, and it wasn't so much for him because he could look like he was just stoned to me, but the, the a lot of the senators or whoever congressmen were so clueless. They were asking him like almost like what's the internet, Zuckerberg, and he's like he doesn't know where to laugh or just give another robotic answer, but they were so clueless. That was just, and you could see them, like you said, they looked down and they're like they were looking for the next question on their paper that they didn't know what the hell he just said.
Exactly. And Tom, therein lies how you can also use knowledge as leverage. Okay, the senators don't want to look bad in
Right.
public, so you give them an answer that would make them scratch their head. Well, they don't want to scratch their head, but what do they want to do? They want to move on so they can get out of the spotlight.
Yeah, that's right. You're using that to your advantage.
Mhm.
All right. Well, we got to take a little break for our sponsor message. And then when we come back, we're going to have Greg tell us what's a typical day look like for him and how he stays motivated. Now, let me ask you, folks, have you ever thought about getting paid to speak and you're not really sure if you're ready to invest in lots of training? Well, I've got the solution. And this also works for business presentations. I mean, not necessarily big keynote speeches in front of thousands, but anytime you get up to speak, the better you are, the better it is for everybody and for your career. Now, AmazingPublicSpeaking.com has over 475 public and professional speaking techniques, openings, closings, attention-gaining devices, humor, and the business of speaking. And it's only $97 for an entire year. So you can also check out the complimentary webinar we have on the same topic. It's got 30 speaking tips and, like I said, 30.675 minutes. It's a little bit longer than that. But all this will be in the show notes at screwthecommute.com/54. All right, back to the main event. Greg, what's a typical day look like for you?
Well, it depends. It depends
You like
on
that
whether
it depends answer all the time.
well, exactly, because Life depends. What you engage
I
in on a
wear
daily
Depends.
basis.
What are you talking about?
Now there's an advertisement for them, isn't it? No, but seriously, Tom, uh, with my day, it depends on what I'm doing per. Am I addressing client activities, creating a presentation for clients, preparing to negotiate on behalf of clients, writing content that will go out through the internet to provide others with insights that they can use when they're negotiating? Again, it really does depend on the day per
All right, but
how
what time
I
do you get
am.
up and what do you do? Do you still exercise? Do you have breakfast? Do you drink coffee? What's it really look like inside the Greg Williams home?
Messy. No.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, exactly, right? Now, I do exercise nowhere near where I should be, the level of where I should be nowadays because I'm creating too much content. But I exercise, I do drink coffee. What time do I get up? It depends on what time I go to bed. As I said earlier,
Oh, that's
bedtime,
right.
I
Sometimes
may go to
you're a
bed.
night owl, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So
Mhm.
2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I may be up working on something, and thus I may sleep until 9 o'clock the next morning,
Oh, you
or
slacker.
that's it. I know, really, right, Tom? But seriously speaking, to that point, there's something to be said about physiology. Your thought process is also tied into getting the proper amount of rest, the proper amount of exercise, and the proper amount of nutrients. So I try to stay in balance by getting the level of exercise that I should, although I don't to the degree that I should be getting right now. And I try to maintain a sense of, hey, Tom, there goes that train again. They want me to jump on it.
Yeah,
Boy,
that's all right. That's all right. Stick with us.
but I, yeah, okay. But seriously, I try to maintain a regimen that allows me to stay in balance such that I'm in harmony with myself.
Now, how do you stay motivated when you work by yourself, right?
Oh, Tom, I love that question. And the reason I love that question is because someone will walk up to me after a presentation. They'll say, "Oh my gosh, Mr. Williams." And I'll tell them, first of all, don't call me Mr. Williams. Just call me Greg. I don't want to think my father just walked in the room. But the other thing that I will tell them is, well, I appreciate the compliment, but understand something. You motivated yourself. I said something that caused you to have a reaction. You chose how you would react to what I said, and thus you're the source of being motivated. And I also tell them if you give your powers away by telling someone else that they are the source of your motivation, you're not realizing the fact that you are the one controlling your own life. And thus, how do I stay motivated? Again, it's through the acts that I engage in imparting information that others can benefit from. And Tom, let's not be Pollyannish about that. There are times when I will get somewhat down. And when I sense that I'm in such a mindset, I will think to myself, when did this first start? Why did it start? Okay, I was the one that brought it on. I'm going to change it. Sometimes I may listen to uplifting music. Sometimes I may just literally, Tom, start jumping up and down, exercising, or whatever be the case. But I know I have the ability within myself to change my mood, and I go about doing just that, such that I can stay positive.
Great advice, man. Um, yeah, I work by myself too. I mean, I have employees all over the place, but I'm pretty much by myself where I work, and I'm working late into the night, and it's almost the same thing. I just love creating things that didn't exist, and I love hearing from people that heard something that I said or bought one of my products and then went out and did what That's the other thing. It's not a lot of times it's self help, but they call it shelf help because people buy it and they don't do anything with it. But I just love that, and I'm waiting for the next one to come in all the time. So
Hmm.
do you have any parting thoughts for all our screwballs? We call them screwballs. Screw the
I love it. Yes, I definitely do. Always look at yourself as being all that you can be and all that you want to become. Also, never ever forget that you're always negotiating.
Is that the quote from your mother?
That's the quote from my mother.
Say it again for him.
You're always negotiating.
You're always negotiating. Greg, thanks so much for spending the time with our screwballs and myself. I haven't talked to you for a while. I knew it was going to be great and we'd have a lot of fun, and we sure did. So we'll have you back one of these days. So
sounds like a plan.
Everybody, check out Greg's stuff and the show notes at screwthecommute.com/54. And check out my Monday training is coming up. Next episode is 55, where I'll be teaching you about private label products. These are products created by someone else, and you get to put your name on them and sell them and keep all the money. So don't miss that. I'll catch y'all later.